August 1944. Warsaw had 1 million people, 85,000 buildings, 26 theaters, 64 cinemas, hundreds of parks. October 1944, 0 people, 0 buildings, only ash and rubble. The difference was 63 days, and one man spent those 63 days 18 meters below the city, in darkness, with rats, alone. When he emerged, the city was gone, but he was still breathing. And whether that was a curse or a miracle, he would never know. August 1st, 1944, 1700 hours, Warsaw, Poland. Kazimierz Novak, 28 years old, a teacher, Armia Krajowa, Polish Home Army resistance fighter, was looking out his apartment window to the street below. Down there, hundreds of Polish civilians and resistance fighters, armed with weapons, waited ready. WWII was approaching, the beginning of the Warsaw Uprising. In Kazimierz's pocket was a photograph, his wife Anna and their 7-year-old daughter Maria. 2 weeks ago, he had sent them to a friend's farm, 50 kilometers from Warsaw, safe, or so he hoped. He would stay, because Poland would fight for freedom. At 1700 hours, Operation Bursa, Tempest, began. 50,000 Polish resistance fighters attacked Wehrmacht garrisons. Kazimierz, along with his friends Tomasz and Piotr, stormed a German checkpoint in the Stare Miasto Old Town district. The first 48 hours were miraculous. The Poles captured 60% of the area. The Polish flag flew over Warsaw. People danced in the streets, but Kazimierz knew something was wrong, because the Red Army had stopped on the other side of the Vistula River, just 20 kilometers away, but they weren't coming. They were watching. August 5th, 1944, the Wehrmacht launched its counterattack. General Erich von den Bach-Selewski brought SS units to Warsaw. The Derlewanger Brigade, a unit composed of war criminals and prison convicts, and the Kaminsky Brigade, Russian collaborators. These units didn't care about international rules of war. On August 6th, in the Wola district, German units massacred 40,000 civilians in a single day. When Kazimierz heard the reports, he couldn't believe it. But then he saw the survivors fleeing to Stare Miasto, wounded, traumatized, eyes vacant. The Wehrmacht was systematically destroying neighborhoods. Flammenwerfer, flamethrowers, heavy artillery, Stuka bombardments, and worst of all, Goliath track mines, remote-controlled explosive vehicles that demolished buildings from their foundations. By August 15th, Kazimierz's unit was trapped in Stare Miasto. The Wehrmacht had surrounded them from all sides. Food was gone. Ammunition was low. There were no medicines for the wounded. And worst of all, the Red Army was still waiting on the other side of the river. Kazimierz asked his commander, "Why aren't the Soviets coming?" The commander replied with a bitter smile, "Because Stalin wants us to die. If Poland's independent leaders die, controlling post-war Poland will be easier." That night, Kazimierz understood. Warsaw was burning between two fires, Germans in front, Soviets behind, and the Poles in the middle dying alone. August 20th, 1944. Decision Day. Stare Miasto could no longer be defended. The Wehrmacht had surrounded the neighborhood from 3 sides. The only escape route, the sewers. Hundreds of resistance fighters and civilians would attempt to escape through Warsaw's underground sewer system to the Śródmieście city center district. At 2100 hours, Kazimierz and 240 people descended through a sewer cover. Darkness, total darkness. They had flashlights, but the batteries were weak. Kazimierz followed the back of the man in front of him. Water came up to his knees, cold, filthy, stinking. For 2 hours they walked through labyrinthine tunnels. Some got lost. Some collapsed. Kazimierz heard a woman scream. She had tripped on something in the darkness, lying in the water with a broken leg. They had to leave her. Finally, they reached Śródmieście, but the Wehrmacht was squeezing there too. The war was becoming more hopeless by the day. September 2nd, 1944. The Red Army still wasn't moving. Churchill and Roosevelt pressured Stalin. Help Warsaw, But Stalin cited technical problems as an excuse. In reality, he was waiting for the Polish Home Army to be destroyed. That same day, the Wehrmacht hit the city from the 8th sector with heavy artillery. Kazimierz's shelter was in the basement of a building. An artillery shell hit the building's upper floor. The ceiling collapsed. Kazimierz was buried under the rubble. Hours later, his friends Tomasz and Piotr pulled him out. His left arm was broken. His head was split. But he was alive. But Tomasz brought bad news. The Wehrmacht is controlling all sewer exits. Soon they'll drop gas bombs inside. Kazimierz made a decision. He would go down into the sewers and stay there until the Wehrmacht withdrew, or until he died. September 10th, 1944, 23:47 hours. Kazimierz Novak descended into Warsaw's sewers. For the last time. What he took with him: one backpack. Inside, 2 loaves of bread, old, moldy. 1 bottle of water, 500 milliliters. 1 flashlight, estimated battery life 6 hours. 1 knife, 1 photograph, Anna and Maria, and no hope. Tomasz and Piotr stayed above, continuing the defense. Their last words to Kazimierz: when the war ends, tell them what happened. Kazimierz walked into the darkness. The cover closed behind him. And so began 63 days of hell. Days 1 to 7. First week, orientation. Kazimierz hid in a side tunnel. The main channels were dangerous. The Wehrmacht patrolled them, sometimes dropping gas bombs. Side channels were safer but narrower, dirtier. On the first day, he used the flashlight for only 10 minutes to conserve the battery. The rest of the time was total darkness. His eyes saw nothing. Only sounds existed: dripping water, distant explosion sounds, and rats. Rats were everywhere, hundreds of them. On the first night, Kazimierz felt one run over him. He didn't scream, because making noise could attract the Wehrmacht. On the second day, he ate the bread, half of it. On the third day, he drank the water, half of it. On the fourth day, he realized this wouldn't be enough. On the fifth day, he killed his first rat, with the knife, in the darkness, by feel. The rat screamed, but Kazimierz strangled it. Then he ate it raw, furry, bloody, disgusting. But hunger kills everything, including disgust. On the 7th day, the flashlight battery died. Now there was no light at all. Only darkness. Endless, absolute darkness. A human living in darkness develops adaptations. Kazimierz began relying on touch and hearing. He found direction by feeling the tunnel walls. He moved forward by listening to the sound of water. Food, rats, 1 or 2 every day. Catching them became easier, because in the darkness, he had learned to move silently. The rats couldn't see him, but he could hear them. Water, sewer water. Yes, mixed with human waste. But there was no choice. There was risk of disease, but dying of thirst was certain death. Kazimierz drank what seemed the cleanest water. Sleep. Kazimierz slept sitting up, leaning against the wall. He couldn't lie down because of the water. Each sleep lasted 2 to 3 hours. Then he'd wake, escaping dreams. Dreams were worse than reality, because in dreams there was sun. And when he woke, there was only darkness. On day 14, Kazimierz noticed something. He no longer knew what day, what time, what month it was. Time had become meaningless. Only sleep count existed, and even that was getting confused. Loneliness, darkness, and silence. This trinity shatters the human mind. Kazimierz started talking to himself. At first he muttered quietly. Then he spoke aloud. To Anna, to Maria, to dead friends. There were no answers, but talking was better than going mad. On day 27, he had a hallucination, or thought he did. In the darkness, a light, small, flickering, like a candle. Kazimierz walked toward it, but there was no light. It existed only in his mind. On day 30, he forgot his own name. Not completely, but he hesitated. Kazimierz, isn't it? He asked. He wasn't asking anyone, just asking the darkness. On day 32, he heard something. Above, very far away, an explosion. a very large explosion. Kazimierz knew what this was. The Wehrmacht was destroying buildings with dynamite. Systematic demolition. They had completely destroyed Stare Miasto. Now they were destroying Śródmieście. Kazimierz cried that night, for the first time, because he understood that above, his city was being destroyed, and he could do nothing. Kazimierz's body began to collapse. Rat meat provided protein but no vitamins. Sewer water brought disease. Dysentery began. Every day, diarrhea. His body weakened. His muscles wasted. His left arm was still broken. It hadn't healed properly. It set at a crooked angle. He couldn't use it properly anymore. His teeth began to rot. Vitamin C deficiency. His gums bled. And worst of all, his eyes. After 36 days in darkness, his eyes might become unable to adapt to light. But Kazimierz couldn't test this, because there was no light. On day 42, Kazimierz made a decision. He would go up. He would open a cover, see what was happening. Maybe the Wehrmacht had withdrawn. Maybe the war had ended. He reached a cover. He listened. No sounds above. Slowly, very slowly, he pushed the cover. It cracked open. Light, for the first time in 32 days, stabbed his eyes. The pain was sharp, terrible. His eyes watered, closed. But through the crack he saw something. Smoke, ash, rubble. And in the distance, German voices, they were still there. Kazimierz closed the cover and returned below, into the darkness. Kazimierz no longer counted time. He just existed. Every day he killed a rat. Every day he drank some water. Every day he died a little more. On day 54 he had a dream. Maria was waving at him. "Papa, come," she said. Kazimierz ran toward her, but Maria moved away, disappeared, and Kazimierz woke up, in the darkness, alone. On day 58 he could no longer speak. His voice wouldn't come. Only rasping existed. On day 61 something changed above. The sounds stopped. The explosion stopped. Kazimierz listened. Silence. Total silence. On day 63, Kazimierz decided he would emerge, no matter what. October 12, 1944, 14:30 hours. Kazimierz Novak surfaced. He found a ladder. He climbed. He pushed the cover. It opened. Light stabbed his eyes again. This time he didn't close his eyes. He accepted the pain and climbed up. The first thing he saw, the sky. But the sky was gray, covered with smoke. The second thing he saw, rubble. Buildings had been demolished, completely. Every building was a pile of debris. The third thing he saw, no one. The streets were empty. The silence was absolute. Kazimierz walked. His feet were weak. He stumbled, but he walked. He reached Krakowski Przedmieście Street, once the busiest street. Now nothing remained. He reached the cathedral, St. John's Cathedral, once a beautiful Gothic structure. Now only walls remained, no roof, no windows. Kazimierz stood in the square and understood. Warsaw was gone. But how? In 63 days, how can a city be completely destroyed? The answer, systematic annihilation. On October 2nd, 1944, the Polish Home Army surrendered. They had resisted for 63 days. 16,000 resistance fighters had died. 150,000 civilians had died, and the Wehrmacht had won. But surrender wasn't enough. Hitler had given a personal order. Warsaw must be wiped from the face of the earth. The Wehrmacht sent special demolition units to Warsaw. Verbrennungs- und Vernichtungskommando, burning and destruction commandos. Their mission, destroy every building with dynamite, flamethrowers, and systematic demolition. Between October 3rd and January 10th, 1945, the Wehrmacht achieved these numbers. 85% of buildings completely destroyed, demolished or burned. 26 theaters, all destroyed. 64 cinemas, all destroyed. 81 elementary schools, all destroyed. 14 libraries, all destroyed. 2 million books burned. National Museum, destroyed. 800,000 artifacts inside destroyed Royal Castle, dynamited Old Town, Stare Miasto. 90% destroyed population, dropped from 1 million to 174,000. Remainder forcibly evacuated. Warsaw had been one of Europe's most cultured cities, now just a ghost city. The first hours he was in shock. He couldn't speak, couldn't think. He just walked. Then he heard something. Sound. Human voice. Kazimierz ran toward the sound, or tried to run. His legs wouldn't work. He found a group. 6 people, Polish civilians. They had hidden, waiting for the Wehrmacht to leave. When they saw Kazimierz, they were horrified. Kazimierz hadn't seen a mirror in 63 days, but from their faces he understood. He looked terrible. Long beard, disheveled hair, sunken face, eyes deep in their sockets, skeletal body, and his smell. The smell of sewers. A woman gave him water. Kazimierz drank clean water. Clean water for the first time in 63 days. He cried. The group leader, Stanisław, asked, "Where did you come from?" Kazimierz tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't come. Only rasping. Stanisław understood. From the sewers? Kazimierz nodded. How long? Kazimierz raised his fingers. 6, 3, 63. Stanisław's eyes widened. 63 days in the sewers? Kazimierz nodded again. Silence. Because the group couldn't believe this. 63 days in darkness, alone, eating rats? Impossible. But Kazimierz was there. Living proof. But Kazimierz's question remained unanswered. What had happened to his family? On October 15th, Kazimierz and Stanisław's group left Warsaw. The Wehrmacht was gone. Yes, the Red Army was approaching. German units were retreating west. Kazimierz went to Anna's friend's farm. 50 kilometers, walking. It took 3 days because his legs were weak. When he arrived at the farm, no one was there. The building had burned. Only the skeleton remained. He learned from a neighbor. The farm had been raided by the Wehrmacht on September 4th. They were searching for hidden resistance fighters. None were found, but as punishment, the farm was burned. Those inside too. Anna and Maria were there. Kazimierz went to the garden that night. There were 2 graves. The neighbor had buried them. Nameless. Kazimierz knelt before the graves and sat silently. Hours passed. Night fell. But Kazimierz didn't rise because there were no more tears left to cry. 1945 to 1950. Post-war. The war ended in May 1945. Poland was liberated, but under Soviet control. Stalin's puppet was the new Polish government. Kazimierz returned to Warsaw. The city was slowly being rebuilt, but this wasn't the old Warsaw. This was the new Soviet-style Warsaw. Kazimierz began working as a teacher. Again. But he couldn't teach his students the truth, because official history was a lie. The Red Army liberated Warsaw. Truth. The Red Army watched Warsaw burn. Kazimierz never married, because he couldn't replace Anna. He never had children, because he couldn't replace Maria. And he never spoke about the 63 days, because no one would believe him. 1956, first time speaking. In Poland, the October thaw occurred, loosening of Soviet control. For the first time, people could speak without censorship. A journalist found Kazimierz. I want to do an interview about the Warsaw Uprising, he said. Did you participate? Kazimierz said yes. How long did you fight? 40 days. Then? Kazimierz hesitated. Then I went down. Where? Into the sewers. The journalist raised his eyebrows. How many days? 63. The journalist dropped his notepad. 63 days in the sewers, alone. Kazimierz nodded. That's impossible. I know, but I lived it. The interview was published, but no one believed it. Propaganda, they said. Exaggeration, they said. Kazimierz had expected this. He returned to silence. 1980s Solidarity Movement. Under Lech Wałęsa's leadership, the Solidarity Movement began. Poland's effort to free itself from Soviet control. Kazimierz was now 64 years old, retired, but he joined the movement. Because Poland still wasn't free. In 1989, the Soviet bloc collapsed. Poland was liberated. Real freedom. For the first time since 1939. Kazimierz stood that day in the center of Warsaw, in the rebuilt Stare Miasto Square. Colorful buildings, tourists, music. But Kazimierz saw 1944. The rubble, the corpses, the silence. A young man approached him. "Grandfather, are you okay?" Kazimierz smiled. "Yes, I'm just remembering." "Remembering what?" "This place used to be different." "Different? But this is a historic place." Kazimierz nodded. "Yes, historic, but not real. These buildings were rebuilt in the 1950s. The originals were destroyed in 1944. The young man was surprised. "I didn't know." Most people don't. Kazimierz was 78 years old. The Polish National Historical Archive was conducting interviews with Warsaw Uprising survivors. They found Kazimierz. The interviewer was a young woman. "Mr. Novak," she said, "your story is legendary. 63 days in the sewers alone. But there are no records, no documents. How can we verify?" Kazimierz smiled. "You can't, because in the sewers, I didn't keep records. I just survived." "But people doubt." "I know, they always doubted." "Then why didn't you speak? For years?" Kazimierz was silent for a long time. Then, "Because speaking means remembering. And remembering means pain. For 63 days, while I tried to survive, above me my city was burning. My family was dying. And I could do nothing. Just in the darkness, eating rats, waiting." The interviewer's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Kazimierz nodded. "Me too. Every day I'm sorry." March 14th, 1996. Kazimierz Novak died. He was 80 years old. His funeral was held at Połąski Cemetery, the historic cemetery in Warsaw. Attendees, a few former students, a few uprising survivors, and one historian. The gravestone, Kazimierz Novak, 1916 to 1996, teacher, resistance fighter, survivor. After the ceremony, historian Dr. Jerzy Wysocki conducted archival research. He wanted to verify Kazimierz's story. What he found, Wehrmacht records. Between September 10th and October 12th, 1944, it was recorded that 47 gas bombs were dropped into Warsaw's sewer system. But no one had emerged from the sewers, according to German records. But Kazimierz had emerged because he was in side channels, tunnels not on the Wehrmacht's maps. Wysocki also found a document. In 1950, Warsaw reconstruction crews had found a backpack in a sewer tunnel. Inside, moldy bread remnants, a knife, a photograph, unreadable from water damage. The document classified it as belonging to unknown uprising fighter. Wysocki restored the photograph. The image, a woman and a small girl, Anna and Maria. Kazimierz's photograph. 2004 60th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. Poland held a major memorial ceremony. 50,000 people attended. President Alexander Kwaśniewski gave a speech. The Warsaw Uprising is a symbol of Poland's freedom struggle. For 63 days, our heroes resisted. But at the ceremony, Kazimierz Novak wasn't mentioned because he wasn't in official records. Unverified survivor. Dr. Wysocki published an article. Warsaw's longest survival story, 63 days underground. The article detailed Kazimierz's story, presented evidence, and demanded official recognition. The Polish government rejected the request. Reason: insufficient documentation. But the people didn't forget. In a Warsaw neighborhood, volunteers hung a plaque. From this sewer cover, Kazimierz Novak emerged after 63 days. October 12, 1944. He will not be forgotten. 2024. Present day. Warsaw today is a vibrant European capital with 1.8 million people. Stare Miasto is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists photograph colorful buildings, cafes, restaurants, music. But 90% of the buildings were rebuilt between 1950 and 1960. The originals were destroyed in 1944. The Warsaw Uprising Museum exists, opened in 2004. Inside, Kazimierz Novak's story appears on a small panel, unverified but probable survival story. Most tourists visiting the museum miss that panel because the museum is large, the story small. But some stop. They read, and they're amazed. 63 days in the sewers? Is it real? Museum guides give the standard answer. We can't verify, but some survivors told similar stories. War makes people do extraordinary things. Kazimierz Novak was a survivor history forgot, but there are thousands like him. The Warsaw Uprising cost 200,000 dead, 16,000 resistance fighters, 150,000 civilians, and an unknown number of missing. No one knows what happened to them. Kazimierz didn't disappear. He lived. He lived 80 years, but those 63 days shaped the rest of his life. Because those 63 days taught him something. Surviving is not living. Surviving is just breathing. Living is beyond breathing, and it's loving, remembering, telling. Kazimierz survived for 63 days. The next 52 years, he tried to live. But every night he saw the darkness. Every night he heard the rats. Every night he felt the loneliness. And every morning when he woke, he asked a question. Why me? Why did I survive when my city died? The answer never came. And perhaps no answer was needed. Because Kazimierz's survival was itself an answer. Warsaw was destroyed in 1944. But it was rebuilt. People returned. Life continued. Kazimierz stayed in darkness for 63 days, but he emerged. He lived, he told, and that is enough. Because history isn't just the story of winners, but also of survivors. And Kazimierz Novak survived. 63 days, in darkness, alone, hopeless. But he survived. And that is a story that must not be forgotten.